Hello, I'm Sasha of Sasha Makes Cards, and today I'm here with Whimsy Stamps sharing this fun space themed card I created featuring the Over the Moon clear stamp set, the moon background rubber stamp, and the No-Fuss Masking Sheets. Now this stamp set features a bunch of different images, however I decided to stamp the one with the little alien in the spaceship, so I first stamped that onto a 100-pound hammermill cardstock using an alcohol marker friendly ink, which I used the Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink, stamping it a couple of times to make sure I get a nice, crisp, sharp impression. I then stamped the moon background rubber stamp onto the No-Fuss Masking Sheets. Since my plan for this card is to create an almost entirely one layer card, obviously it's not entirely one layer because I end up fussy cutting the little alien guy out, but I first stamped the moon background onto the No-Fuss Masking Sheet, and then I stamped it onto a piece of 100-pound hammermill cardstock that I trimmed down to fit onto an A2 card base, measuring 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. When you're stamping an image onto the No-Fuss masking sheet, you have to make sure that you are stamping on the correct side. An easy way to tell is to simply peel back the adhesive and feel which side is the sticky side and which side is the backing. I stamped the moon image onto the No-Fuss masking sheet using the same ink as I did stamping onto the hammermill cardstock intended for coloring. However, I only ended up stamping it once because since it's just the masking sheet, you don't need it to be as good of an impression as if you are coloring, because you're simply just peeling it off and placing it on the image to mask it off from the ink or whatever you're doing. Once I was done with the stamping, I could then fussy cut the alien and the moon on the No-Fuss masking sheet using a pair of spring-assisted scissors. Today I'm going to be coloring the alien in the moon image using Ohuhu alcohol markers, using a blue and a neutral gray color scheme. As always, I've put together this little color combination chart here. If you would like, feel free to pause the video, take a screenshot, and reference that. I also have all the colors I am currently using up on the screen in the bottom left-hand corner to make it easy to see how I color and what colors I am using. Starting from my darkest color, working to my lightest color, for the blue color combination, I start with B080, next is B070, then B050, and lastly B030. As for the neutral grays that I'm using, I start with CG070, next is CG050, then CG030, and lastly is CG020. Once I was happy with my coloring using the alcohol markers, I then moved on to using the Prismacolor Premier colored pencils. I ended up using a few different shades of blue as well as black and a gray for the spaceship to help deepen the colors and add more shading to the images. After I was done coloring the little alien, I then moved on to the moon and colored it in the same kind of way as I colored the alien, starting with the alcohol markers using the same gray color combination that I used for the alien's spaceship, and then moving on to the Prismacolor Premier colored pencils. Now the fun thing about coloring something like this moon image is it's the moon. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can kind of be a little haphazard with how you're putting down the colors. As you can see, I am kind of just laying it down, hoping it works out for the best, and it usually always does. So you kind of just, how I do it is I start it by adding the darkest color at the bottom of the moon as well as around the craters to help give that image the 3D effect. Of course, gradually getting lighter and lighter in the alcohol markers I am using to create the full gradient and to have a full range of darks and lights in the image. Once I am done coloring the alien in the moon, I can then move on to creating the background. To do this, I start by simply peeling off the moon mask we created earlier, placing it onto the background that we just colored with the moon, and then starting to ink blend a kind of a blue space sky onto the background. For this, I'm using Black Soot Distress Oxide, Faded Jeans Distress Oxide, and Salty Ocean Distress Oxide. I start by using the Black Soot Distress Oxide in the very corners of the card, and then moving on to some Faded Jeans as well as Salty Ocean, creating the gradient from dark to light as we go down to the card, going to the moon. To finish off the background, I then wanted to splatter it with both white and black paint to kind of create a starry sky effect. For the black, I used a simple black acrylic paint by spraying it with water and splattering it with a fan brush. For my white, I used a bleed-proof white paint. My personal favorite for this is the Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed-proof white. Sprayed that with water, splattered it on using a fan brush as well. After I let that dried, I then very carefully peeled off the mask from the card background. Now, since these masking sheets are repositionable paper, I decided to place the mask back onto the backing paper, stick it into the package so that I could then reuse it at a later date. Now, all there is left to do is to stamp the sentiment and glue everything all together. This stamp set comes with 3 sentiments, including Take Us to Your Cake, Happy Birthday Human, and I'm Over the Moon for You. For today's card, I decided to go with the I'm Over the Moon for You, so I stamped that using the Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink onto a scrap piece of white cardstock and trimmed it down to the size of my card base, as my plan is to create a strip going over the top of the card. Lastly, to finish everything off, I am gluing everything down using some Barely Art liquid adhesive glue. I start by gluing the background onto an A2 size card base, then gluing the little alien guy onto the moon, as well as the sentiment strip that we just made onto the top of the card. And that is the completed card project. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out the description below for a complete list of the Whimsy Stamps products I used to create this card, as well as links to shop these products, and the links to both my social media and the Whimsy Stamps social media. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.